Well, ladies and gentlemen, in one hand, they're neck and neck, and in another hand, no, it's a complete blowout. I'm talking about the rivalry between the currently two richest men in the world, and in order to find out who the richest person in the world is, it's always good to go to Forbes because they have something called real-time billionaires. And if we look at the real-time billionaires, we find out that the two leading contestants are Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. Elon Musk was on top for a while, but Bezos is coming on strong in the backstretch. And around and around and around it goes. But that's not really the issue I'm interested in today. The issue I'm interested in today is how are they doing when they go head-to-head in another field of competition, and that is in space exploration. Everybody knows about Elon Musk and SpaceX. Very few people know about Jeff Bezos and Blue Origin, but he's been working on it about as long as SpaceX has. He's also trying to land a rocket on its tail with the landing gear that comes out and so on and so forth. And while Elon Musk has taken SpaceX into a $46 billion company, we find out that the big rocket, the orbital rocket, the equivalent of the Falcon 9 that Bezos was producing, called the New Glenn, is delayed at least until next year, and Steve Green says probably not until after that either. So why is Elon Musk so incredibly successful with his rocket company, and Jeff Bezos, who's had a lot more money for than Elon Musk for a lot longer time, why is he facing the same kind of setbacks that would qualify him for a NASA contract, for like Boeing, for example? Well, it's got to do with management style, I think. Steve, let's start with you. You've got two guys that are both starting out more or less at the same time, trying to do private spaceflight and trying to do it in such a way as to make it economically feasible, which means downstream, let's think about recovering this rocket. So Elon Musk has the Falcon 1 rocket and it goes off the pad and explodes. And he has another launch of the Falcon rocket and it explodes in midair. And then it's like watching the castle fall over and fall into the swamp. But on the fourth try, the rocket actually does make it into space. Now we get to the Falcon 9 and we're going to try and land this thing on a barge. Kabloom, kabloom. Boom, over on the side. Kabloom. But then he actually sticks one, and then he starts sticking some more, and then he starts landing more than the average, and then he's landing many of them. Now it's a news story, not when it lands. Now it's a news story when it actually doesn't land successfully. Meanwhile, Jeff Bezos is over there with New Shepard, suborbital rocket, not happening, not going anywhere. And then he decides to go long, swing for the fences, and that looks like it's an utter catastrophe. How do you explain all of this?
Number one, neither one of those catastrophes down in Texas were catastrophes. That's
exactly right.
When the spaceship prototype 8 crashed on landing, Musk got on Twitter and said, "We got the data."
Huge success.
They'd never tried. No one had ever tried anything like this. They got the data to make it work better next time. The next time it still crashed, but it worked better. Who knows what's going to happen on the third try? I'm really looking forward to that. Somebody, I think in the Ars Technica comments section, said that Musk has half a factory down in Texas that's pumping out rockets that fly. Bezos has a empty, completed factory down in Florida and one missile that's never flown. And there's a real thing about the attitudes here. There's a line I read ages ago, months ago, probably, that SpaceX operates like Elon Musk is a man with a mission. Blue Origin operates like Jeff Bezos is a man with a hobby. And I think this is an important distinction because it really is. Musk and SpaceX were basically broke trying to get a rocket into space in the early days when they were flying stuff out of the South Pacific. And they were down to, we've got one more. And then I got to close up shop. This is the last thing our last chance to make something fly. And damn it, they made it flew because they had to. They had to make this thing fly. And that's how they got into commercial space. They showed they could do it. And they started launching small payloads and larger payloads. And the Falcon 9 that flies today is twice as powerful as the first Falcon 9 that successfully flew. They just keep iterating all of these baby steps to make the rockets more powerful, more affordable. The result is that it now costs 40% less to launch a kilogram of mass into orbit than it did before SpaceX came along. That is amazing. That is progress. That's huge. Blue Origin, on the other hand, operates like a country or like a company. Actually, it operates kind of like a country because Bezos has such deep pockets. They've never been desperate. They've never had that heat on their back. They've never had to make a missile fly or shudder. That's it. And it's such an important distinction. It's sort of this curse of money. NASA gets money every year, and they're told exactly how to spend it and by Congress, and not much seems to happen. We've got a lot of that going on at Blue Origin, and it just so happens that Jeff Bezos has hired a lot of guys, a lot of engineers from what's derided as old space. Mm-hmm. Musk is new space.
Scott, there's another big difference because I think Steve's point is correct. Essentially, now there's obviously a couple years back and forth, but essentially they both started at the same time, Musk and Bezos, SpaceX and Blue Origin. But one of the differences between the two companies when they were both figuring out how to do this, and one of them has succeeded, the other one's still working on it, was that SpaceX was incredibly open, that everybody was seeing everything that SpaceX ever did. SpaceX, not too terribly long ago, put together their own compilation called How Not to Land a Rocket, which is just nothing but their explosions. Blue Origin, on the other hand, has always been extremely secretive. That's really the only word for them. They have been secretive. They have been very, very closed about what they're working on and how long they're working on it and so on and so forth. It is, in a very general sense, the difference between the American and the Soviet space program. One side is saying, well, we're going to do this in front of everybody, and if it blows up, it blows up. The other side is saying, we can't possibly take the embarrassment of a failed launch. If the thing explodes, we've got to make sure nobody finds out about it. So since you're dealing with the same kind of engineers, same level of computer technology, same level of metallurgy and so on, one guy's succeeding and the other one's failing. And I think a lot of it has to do with that attitude about whether or not we want to fail in public versus we cannot let anybody see something go wrong here.
Yes, I think that's a key element. I think another key element of it is Elon Musk has a definite vision about where all this is going. And you do get the sense that Jeff Bezos is not driven that way.
It's a hobby.
I think he enjoys the whole idea of putting rockets in space. I think maybe he thinks it's a good business model and that he's got the resources where he can burn some and still be able to succeed at it eventually. But Elon Musk is going to Mars, and everybody knows Elon Musk is going to Mars, and everybody who works for Elon Musk knows he's going to Mars. And so there's no question about why we're in this. We're going to Mars, and we're going to have humans living on Mars. And so, that kind of an overarching, compelling vision of doing something that's never been done before will draw out of people a kind of greatness that you never suspected they'd have. The other thing is that they are very publicly willing to do what Tom Peters, who wrote In Search of Excellence and a number of other books, used to call ready, fire, aim. And I think in any enterprise in life, perhaps the most valuable lesson Elon Musk is teaching us right now is that people who are watching us right now have things that they know that they really want to do, that they have tried to kind of develop, that they maybe are trying to start a business, or they're trying to write songs, or they're trying to do something. And they are constantly tweaking and fine-tuning and adjusting and waiting and waiting and waiting until finally they won't be able to do it because they'll be dead. And Elon Musk is saying at a certain point, you got to light the rocket and see what happens. And I think, if anything, like the inspiration that comes to me from watching Elon Musk's willingness to publicly crash rockets that cost millions of dollars that you would think would be an embarrassment, and to look at that and say, okay, now aim. What's the next thing we need to do? So if you're like me and you're looking at this, you should say to yourself, okay, what's that thing I know I'm supposed to be doing? Do it. Publish it. Get it out there. Make the video. Start the business. Do something right now in this hour to advance that goal. And don't sit back and wait and plan and scheme and watch that thing just fritter away over time while some other guy doing what you're doing is going to be standing on the surface of Mars, figuratively speaking.
Back in, I want to say it was 1971, Apollo 13 went to the moon, just getting to be routine by this point, and there was an explosion in the command service module and the service module there, and it looked like we were going to lose those astronauts, and unless NASA performed some real genuine engineering miracles, we were going to have 3 dead guys on our hand. And Flight Director Eugene Kranz famously said, failure is not an option. Unfortunately, a lot of businesses have taken that tremendous saying and used it as their corporate motto.
Yeah.
And that's not what Gene Kranz was saying at all. He was saying failure is not an option during this hour. We're getting those guys back. But to say that failure is not an option when you're trying to do something brand new is just completely insane. Musk is on record of saying failure is an option here, and he succeeds because he fails. He succeeds because he's not afraid to fail. He's done exactly what Scott said. He is taking products into the real world and seeing how things behave in the real world. There's an old adage that goes back to the glory days in Edwards Air Force Base in the 50s and 60s that said that the pilot is always right. And what they meant by that is during the early days of pushing the envelope in terms of supersonic flight, test pilots would come back and say, I was at 600 knots, I was starting to get some flutter. And the engineers would say, no, that's impossible. No, it must have been something else. And the pilot said, I'm not inventing. No, it couldn't. It's impossible. I've done the math. It's impossible. The pilot is always right. You don't know what you don't know until you know it. And that is going to require failure. And that's why Elon Musk is so successful. But the main thing, actually, I think, that makes Elon Musk such a success with SpaceX, where Bezos is failing terribly, is the idea of incrementalism. I don't know what's going on the inside, but I have had a little bit of experience with very, very, very rich people, and there's an awful lot of ego that goes on around there. And if I had to guess off the top of my head, I would say that Bezos watched Elon Musk succeeding, soaking up all the publicity. And Bezos said, now I got to hit the grand slam home run. I got to put something that's going to make the Falcon 9 rocket look like a toy. We're going to go with this super giant booster. We're going to fly that thing. And you don't win baseball games by swinging for the fences. You win baseball games by getting on base. That's how it works. Here in my hand, I have 64 gigabytes of RAM. And since it's gamer RAM, it's also got flashing LEDs on it too. 64 gigabytes of RAM. When I first bought a computer, I decided to go out and I had 64 kilobytes of RAM. Kilobytes, megabytes, gigabytes. The kilobytes of RAM were about the same size. So how did we get from there to here? If somebody, when they built the Apple IIe that I first bought, if we had said to them, you must come up with a 64 gigabyte stick of RAM, it would have never, ever happened. They could have worked on it for 200 years and never gotten there. The reason that this is 64 gigabytes of RAM is because 64 kilobytes of RAM worked, and then they melted a 128 kilobyte chip. Then they went to a megabyte chip. Then they went to a 10 megabyte chip. And every single time you do the iteration, you're making things smaller, faster. You're better and better and better at it because you're building on a foundation. You've got a pyramid structure of things that we know, and then we're going to do things a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. SpaceX is the history of incremental improvements. I did not know what Steve just told me, namely that the Falcon 9s now flying are twice as powerful as the original versions. Doesn't surprise me at all. But that's the difference between these two companies, the difference between these two men. One of them is in it for a goal. He's got a target. He's going to Mars, as Scott said, and that's where he is, by God, going. The other guy is trying to, do something impressive. Best advice I ever got in life was, Bill, when you start to get behind in life, if you feel like I should be further along, the desire to hit the big home run gets overwhelming. It's almost like I've got to do something spectacular now. And that is how you stay a nothing for your entire life. My advice to anybody would be just get on base. Hit the singles. You win baseball games by getting on base, and sitting there swinging for the fences is not going to get you the glory you think it is, not over the long term anyway. For Steve Green and Scott Ott, I'm Bill Whittle. This show's made possible by the members at BillWhittle.com, and if you'd like to be one of them, we'd certainly love to have you on the team. We'll see you next week right here on Right Angle.